Good morning. This is Sahala and Aleena taking a seminar on the topic Italian Renaissance, starting with the introduction of early Renaissance. Renaissance is a French word which means rebirth. Renaissance is an intellectual, cultural, and artistic flourishing that occurred first in Florence, Italy, later spread to the rest of Europe. Early modern, it falls between the medieval period and the Industrial Revolution. Expansion of industry and world trade voyages of exploration begins. Commercial and financial dominance of Flanders and Italy. Increased patronage of the arts by wealthy individuals. And introducing our topic, Italian Renaissance occurred in Florence, Italy from 14th to 18th century. Powerful city-states become centers of Italian political, economical, and social life. A return to learning based classical ancient Greek and Roman texts. Most works of art were generally commissioned and paid for by private buyers. Result: an emergence of secular or worldly society as increased wealth created new enjoyment of material things. During this period, they introduces lots of theories, philosophies, etc. Individualism emphasizes on individual ability, high regard of human worth, realization on what individuals could achieve. Humanism, a philosophical stance which affirms the fact that humans have dignity and worth and that they are capable of discovering truths about the world and humanity plays within it purely by appealing to reason and scientific method. Humanists are non-religious people. They believe that the universe is just a natural phenomenon with the supernatural aspects. Return to classicism. Florentine painters strove to portray the human form realistically, developing techniques to render perspective more naturally and light. The birth of capitalism in the late Middle Ages. Perspective. Use of skewed perspective. Cityscape and the figure scale as well as the perspective do not seem to follow rational form. The perspective is derived from the gaze line of justice, science of optics of the time Siena. Influences. Geographical. It must be remembered that Florence was more than a city, being in fact one of the powers of Italy, although its dominance included only the activity and influences a small part of the central Italy. Of the Florentines caused a pope to declare that they were the fifth element. Geological. The quarries of Tuscany supplied large blocks of stones and marble which being near the surface were easily obtained for building purposes and the monumental character. And massiveness of this material considerably influenced the style of the architecture. Climate among other causes which affected the development of the style. The bright and sunny climate rendered large openings for light unnecessary. Climate is well indicated by Renaissance. In bright vignettes and each complete or tower of tomb or nine or palace, how the city glittered through cypress avenues at our feet. Religion. At this period, Florence produced the great Dominican preacher Savonarola, whose reforming energy divided the city and swayed its policy. He looked to the French king to call a general council to reform the church. In art, he tended to Puritan theory, and although suppressed by the Pope, his influence on the minds of his generation was not lost. The Sistine frescoes bearing witness to his power over Michelangelo. As showing the commercial prosperity of Florence, it is worthy of note that the golden florin was first coined in that city in 1252 and soon became the general standard of value in Europe. As rival parties in the city were engaged in constant hostilities, safety and defense were primary motives in buildings in the palace.
Italian Renaissance also has a strong historical influence. Italian Renaissance is believed to be started in Florence, Italy, a place with a rich cultural history and expanded later to other Italian cities such as Venice, Milan, Ferraro, and Rome. Then during the 15th century, Renaissance ideas spread from Italy to France and then throughout the Western and Northern Europe. Florence commenced to grow in importance on the removal of inhabitants of Wesel to the banks of Arno in 1125. The grouping together of independent commonwealths of Italy is a key feature of this period. One city bore rule over the other. Pisa became subject to Florence in 1406, gradually the chief power and then the artistic capital in 14th century. Nobles were at constant feuds with each other and divided into two. In 1494, Charles VIII of France occupied Florence, during his brief invasion of Italy, which arose from his claims on the kingdoms of Naples. The short lived Republic of Savonarola followed, but the Medici, in spite of successive banishments, were finally reinstated by the Emperor Charles V, who, acting on behalf of Ghibellines, took the town in 1530. During a siege of 11 months, Michelangelo acted as the engineer of the Republic. The suppression of political liberty followed, especially under Cosimo I, who, however, greatly extended the Florentine dimensions, Siena being ceded to him in 1557 by the emperor. His successor, the Grand Dukes of Florence, followed until in 1737, the House of Medici becoming extinct, the duchy passed into the hands of Austria. In 1801, as a republic and afterwards the Kingdom of Etruria, it enjoyed political freedom with the exception of the years 1807 to 1814, during which time it was incorporated with France, but in 1860 it was united to the Kingdom of Italy. Art, architecture, and science were closely linked during the Renaissance. In fact, it was one of those unique times when all these fields fused together seamlessly. The architecture in Italy between 1400 and 1830 may be broadly divided into four main periods: the early Renaissance period in the 15th century, the High Renaissance and Mannerism period in the 16th century, the Baroque and Rococo in 17th century and early 18th centuries, and Neoclassical in the mid 18th to early 19th centuries. The architectural features of the Renaissance era. The massive blocks of rusticated masonry were used to give the buildings that character of solidity and ruggedness. Rusticated masonry is nothing but a type of decorative stonework emphasizing a building stone's construction. The palaces were all built round interior courts, possibly derived from the arcaded cloister of the medieval monastery, the walls resting on columnar arcades. The general absence of pilasters of decorative features is especially noticeable in the designs of palaces, which are therefore called as stylar. The sparing use of carved detail and in fact features of any kind gives a marked character of simplicity to the style. The grand effort of these palaces is considerably aided by the massive cornice which crowns the structure, being proportional to the whole height of the building as in Riccardi Palace. Columnar arcade is a special feature as in Ospedale degli Innocenti and the Loggia S. Paolo, and and mural monuments and altars are exceedingly rich with sculpture and decorations. The types of doors and windows of this period may be divided into three groups: the arcade type, the architrave type, and the order type. The arcade type consists of a round arch, in the center of which is a circular column supporting a simple piece of tracery, as the Strozzi, Pitti, and at Riccardi palaces. The architrave is that in which moulding encloses the window, and consoles on either side support a horizontal or pediment cornice, as in courtyard of Pandolfini Palace and in the Palazzo Riccardi. The order type is that in which the opening framed with a pilaster or column on each side supporting an entablature above, this being the final development and as employed in Pandolfini Palace ascribed to Raphael. Looking at the examples of Renaissance buildings in Italy is the Rucellai Palace, the Andrea Matua, and Maria Novella in Florence, all the works of Alberti. And then there are the works of Brunelleschi, which are San Lorenzo, Florence, Florence Cathedral, and Santo Spirito in Florence. Renaissance artists and architects applied many humanist principles to their work. Filippo Brunelleschi applied the elements of classical Roman architecture, shapes, columns, and especially proportions to his own buildings. Architect Leon Battista Alberti explained the principles of linear perspective through his works. Concluding, the Renaissance period was primarily a time of the revival of classical learning and wisdom after a long period of cultural decline and stagnation. The demise of Renaissance was the result of several compounding factors like war, invasions, changing trade routes, and other religious aspects. By the early 17th century, the Renaissance movement had died out, giving way to the Age of Enlightenment. Thank you.